Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. My name is Winston Brooks. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Tullahoma. Work closely with Mary Samaniego, our Senior Planner. And I want to welcome you for coming to the Think Tullahoma 2040 Comprehensive Plan public meeting. It's very important to the success of this meeting to have public input. So we really appreciate you being here tonight. With the way COVID is right now, we do want to encourage everyone, if you can't social distance, to wear a mask, particularly when we get into the breakout sessions where we're talking face-to-face. There are some over on the tables. There's also hand sanitizer around, and there's cold water in the back in that red cooler. Please help yourself. The bathrooms are over here to your right. We are also seeking input from the public through a community survey, which can be found at tullahomatn.gov. If you just go to that homepage, it's the first item there, and you click it. It takes about 9 minutes, and to date we've had good response, but we need as many voices as we can to take that survey. This is also a lengthy process. This is the first opportunity to get input from the public. If you leave here and you think of something that you would like to enter into the record, you can contact us at that same website. It has our contact information, so you can email it to myself or Mayor Noes. And how about a big Eagles shout out to the Tullahoma City Schools for allowing us to use their facilities. Go Eagles. Woo! And with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Ray Noes.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks, and thank you for attending our second meeting that we've had along this line. We had one last night at Robert E. Lee, and thank goodness the acoustics in here are better than they were last night, so we might be able to communicate a little better. Last night, to let you know that we do have most of our Board of Mayor and Aldermen participating in these events. We had at least 3 of the aldermen were in attendance last night, so they are on board for these. They have been attending other meetings today as well. So on behalf of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, I want to particularly thank you for attending tonight. And I know that you wouldn't be here if you didn't want your voices to be heard, so we're anxious to hear from you. Thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. So I guess, Winston, we're going to hit the lights. By the way, this is one of those lighting systems that's kind of all or nothing. You can't like wipe out the ones right behind this or whatever. So please don't fall asleep. We'll try to keep you entertained. Oh, the other thing I should point out, if you look, when you see the map that will be shown to the community in a little bit, you'll notice this whole thing is square. It's actually supposed to be rectangular. So the city will look taller and thinner than a lot of people like that. You know, it's a good look. But it's a little bit different. It's one of the compatibility things with the projector. So anyway, so let me do some quick introductions. So I'm Phil Walker. I'm with the Walker Collaborative. I'm based in Nashville. I'm a city planner and I'm the project manager for this project. And my colleagues over here, now you can actually kind of see them a little bit. Keith Covington, you want to raise your hand. Keith is an architect, urban designer, and planner with Common Ground Urban Design Plus Planning based in Franklin, Tennessee. We've also got Liesl Gothert, who's right here waving, and she is a Tullahoma native, graduated from Tullahoma High School, and she's also a transportation planner, and so we're happy to have her on the team. She's with KCI Technologies, and then Randy Gross. Randy's hiding in the back. He's an economist and strategic planner, so that's our team. And you can see the list of committee members for the steering committee for this project. And we don't have any here tonight, do we? We had some last night, but you know, we'll be meeting with them throughout this process. And they kind of, you know, as the name implies, they steer the direction of the project and give us a lot of good insights and communicate back to the community and things like that. So we're really lucky to have them volunteer their time. So here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to give you a little bit of a project overview, and then talk about some initial observations. If any of you were at the public kickoff meeting back on July 6th, it won't be quite as detailed as that, which is probably good news if you were already at that meeting. And then we're really going to spend most of the time, we'll flip the lights back on and have a Q&A, just a discussion, and particularly get your ideas, your thoughts on the future of Tullahoma. And then after the meeting breaks up, we're going to set ourselves up. We've got these little workstations, like 4 different, 4 tables, 4 sets of maps, and they each represent a different topic. One is land. Oh, do we have the signs for that? I think we. Well, I mean, you don't need to do it now. Well, oh, okay, and we can deal with that later. But anyway, so one station is all about land use and development. Another is about mobility, things that Liesl will work on, transportation issues. Another one is economic development and housing that Randy will man. And then, you're going to do the land use and development. And then, me. And then natural and cultural resource conservation is my topic. So anyway, we'll be set up there. We got maps that relate to those issues, and you can just kind of, share your thoughts after the meeting on that. Also, one other thing, on this wall over here, like between the 2 bathroom doors, is a map, and it's kind of a map exercise where you can take colored dots, it's like color-coded, and you can show where you live, where you work. If you work in your home, there's another color for that. Actually, it's an orange marker because we didn't have that color dot. Where you go to school, where you recreate, that is play, shop, dine, that kind of thing. And anyway, if you have time to do that, that would be great. And we'll show you how to do it after this presentation part of it. Okay, so a comprehensive plan. So if you don't already know, if you haven't heard all about this project, it is literally a blueprint for the future growth of the community. And it's very broad in that it addresses a lot of different issues. It particularly focuses a lot on land use and development and transportation, but also issues like economic development and housing and the natural environment and cultural resources, infrastructure, utilities, that sort of thing. And basically, any good comprehensive plan should answer 4 questions. Where are we now? In other words, what are the existing conditions, whether it's economic or physical or what have you? Number 2, where are we headed? In other words, what are the trends? What direction is a community headed in with regard to, whether it's the economy or land use? Number 3, where do you want to go? And that's why it's so important to have you all here, because this plan is really all about your vision. We're the technical people that can, once we understand what your vision is for the future, then we can figure out how to get you there, which is number 4, how do you get there? That's the real substance of the plan. But those are the 4 things that we will be answering through the course of this project. So why would you want to have a comprehensive plan? Well, there's a lot of reasons, and here's just 5 of them right here. One, to simply build consensus so that everybody's on the same page about the future growth and development of the community. Another is to serve as a basis for zoning. One of the key sections of the plan is what we call place types. So we have a map, place types map. It's a lot like land use, but it goes beyond land use. It's also physical form and character. So, and once we create this map, you'll probably want to take a look at your zoning. We'll point it out in the plan where there are inconsistencies between the plan and your zoning. And I'll talk about zoning a little bit later, but you have a fairly limited number of different zoning districts right now. So you may want to have more tools in the toolbox with that. So it's a basis for your zoning. Also for securing funding. The city is constantly going after grants, and they've had a lot of success, but you're even more successful if you can tie a project that you're trying to get funded with a grant to an overall plan. That scores more points in a lot of these competitive grant situations. So that's another reason. Number 4, to enhance the quality of life. And first and foremost, to enhance it for you, the citizens of Tullahoma, but also, if you're trying to recruit business and industry or have new startup businesses here, it's important to have a good quality of life to attract those people here, those businesses. So that's another reason. And then finally, just to be fiscally efficient. In other words, to have a game plan where you're going to have future physical improvements that are city funded and to be able to, you know, have that overall plan so you're efficient in the way you spend your money. So this is a 5-step project. We're pretty far, we've gone through most of task 1, just kicking the project off, doing a lot of research. We're well into task 2 now, which is these kinds of meetings. We had 3 meetings earlier today, and this meeting now, we did the exact same thing yesterday and Wednesday and Thursday, where we have smaller stakeholder meetings in the daytime, and then from 5 to 7:30, these meetings in each of the 4 quadrants. And then Randy is doing his economic assessment and analysis, and his focus is going to be on economic development and housing, and also looking at either, we're still trying to decide whether it's going to be a hotel market analysis or an event center analysis, but one of those 2 things, and there is a correlation between the 2. And then in mid-November, we'll be back for a 6-day charrette, and a charrette is a multi-day intensive brainstorming session that engages the public in a meaningful way to come up with the ideas for a concept plan, which serves as kind of the framework for the ultimate comprehensive plan. And so the first evening of that charrette, we'll have a workshop where we'll get as many people from the community as we can get to participate. And after we give them a little presentation on our findings, we split people up into teams, maybe 8 to 10 people. Each team is around one table with a big base map and a set of colored markers that are related to certain planning issues. And each team comes up with their plan. We give people about an hour. We walk around and kind of answer questions to keep them going forward. And at the end of that night, each team takes a few minutes to present their key ideas on their plan. And that is the springboard for us then to spend the next 5 days taking those ideas, and not all the ideas will be viable, obviously, but there are always ideas that are, and building on that and just our own experience, we'll come up with the concept plan. And we're going to present that plan on day 6, the evening, which is a Monday, the 16th or so. Anyway, it'll be heavily advertised whenever that's going to occur. And then after we present the concept plan to the public, people will tell us what they like about it, what they don't like about it. We go away, we put together the plan document based on that with a lot more detail than the concept plan, and then give that to the city. There'll probably be an initial wave of edits that they'd like to see, and then we'll get it to where everybody can access it and look at it. And then we'll come back and present it and get yet another loop of feedback from the public on anything else they'd like to see change. And then we'll make those revisions, and then you'll have your plan. Now that's the easy part, right? The challenging part is implementation. Now we are going to have a significant implementation section at the end of the plan, and we're always thinking in terms of implementation when we prepare these plans. So you don't have the proverbial plan that sits on the bookshelf and gathers dust, right? So that's the process. So with that all presented, we're going to talk about some of our initial observations. Keith?
Typical of me to trip over a chair walking up here. My name's Keith Covington. Really glad to be here. Thank you for coming out. This is an awesome process, and it's really great that your community is kind of set up in these 4 quadrants that we can actually be in the community and try to reach as many people as possible. So one of the things, Phil mentioned that we're kind of sort of straddling the end of task 1 and well into task 2. And so this is the time where we have been collecting a lot of data, and we're going to start to review and analyze certain aspects of the community. And I want to talk to you a little bit just about kind of what we're looking at, some of those initial observations as Phil mentioned. The first thing that we're looking at are your natural features. The fact that, looking at topography, for instance, being that you're at the edge of the Highland Rim, that you have gentler slopes in the historic core, steeper slopes in the northeast portion of the city, all of those things affect development. All of those things affect the future growth or not growth of Tullahoma. And so we want to get a handle on how topographically those things would address. You know, your water resources, that's another natural feature that's really important. Not only your water bodies, you know, such as Lake Tullahoma, Avoca Lake, the Rock Creek, and all the other tributaries, but particularly floodway and floodplain. Obviously, Rock Creek, we all know, we actually heard some about that today and a little bit about it last night, some of the flooding issues, and I know it's probably, you know, fresh on our minds given what's happened in Humphreys County and Waverly over the weekend. And so, you know, that's something that you want to consider as you think about the future growth of your area. How do the floodways and floodplains impact future development? And then also wetlands too, which is not as huge of an issue here. They're mainly associated with the tributaries and the waterways, but it's definitely something to consider. Okay. Then we also want to look at the built environment as well. You know, we've taken the assessor's data that identifies what the current land use is for properties within the town or city, and we've mapped that. And we've already, working with the city, we've already identified some areas that were maybe perhaps not quite up to date, and so we're trying to tweak that map as we go along. But this is about what's currently on the ground. Phil's going to talk a little bit later about zoning, which is what you could do with a piece of property. But this is about what's on the ground today. And as you can see, well, I don't know if you can see because you've got the tall, skinny map, but the pink colors are your more commercial areas, red and pink. And so you can sort of see that, and again, this is evident to you guys because you live here and this is you know this community, but your commercial is really concentrated along your main corridors, not surprisingly, and in your downtown. And then it quickly jumps from those commercial corridors in the downtown to single-family neighborhoods. And there's some other, types of development that are obviously interwoven in there, and lots of civic facilities and civic spaces and so forth. But it's a pretty quick transition. And also, the green that you see on there are the larger lots and the rural. So you've got a real balance of right now in terms of some areas that are more natural and then the areas that are obviously built up. And you'll be able to see this map closer over at the stations. And with that, I'm going to let Liesl talk a little bit about mobility.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to be speaking about mobility. So transportation is obviously super important to a community, whether it's movement of freight through your community on rail, trucks, whatnot. So it's a very important part of community planning. So the map that you see behind me here illustrates basically the functional classification of the roadways. What that tells us is how heavy are the traffic volumes typically going to be on those roadways. It influences the street design, so the width of the travel lanes, your shoulders. And then an also important factor with functional classification is if you can kind of see the darker red highlighted with the green, those are roadways that are eligible for federal and state funding. So that's important consideration when we're looking at improvements as well. So in Tullahoma, there's about 180 miles total of roadways, which is a lot of roadway to maintain. 70% of those are local streets providing access to local residential parcels, subdivisions, those types of things. 14% of that mileage are your collector roadways. Those kind of disperse your traffic from those local streets to your more heavy arterial highways, such as your North Jacksons and your Highway 55. We also have access to the Tennessee Department of Transportation's their inventory system. So we have all of the roadway information in terms of the number of lanes, presence of sidewalk, as well as traffic volumes. They have count stations all over the roadway network, and they collect traffic volumes throughout the year. So we're able to kind of see the different traffic volumes and the flows and which roadways might be experiencing bottleneck issues or safety issues. So to no surprise to you all, in In 2019, the highest roadways, or the roadways with the highest traffic volume, were North Jackson, East Carroll Street, Cedar Lane, Wilson Avenue, and then of course your East and West Lincoln as well. And then in addition to vehicular traffic, we're going to be looking at mobility for folks that may be walking or bicycling. Some folks choose to walk or bicycle to their destinations, but other individuals aren't as fortunate to make that choice, so we want to make sure that there's a safe environment and transportation for all users that are using the transportation system. There are 2 state bicycle routes that travel through Tullahoma. You may not be aware, but if you've ever seen the little green signs on the side of the road, that's essentially what those are. And those provide regional connectivity north to south and east to west across this area of Tennessee. We also know about, Keith had mentioned the Rock Creek Greenway. There's a lot of opportunity to expand that Greenway as well. But that existing trail network provides important connectivity to a lot of Tullahoma's great recreational assets as well as schools. And then finally, I will make a note, those dots that you can sort of see, they'll be on my map over there, but those are bicycle and pedestrian vehicle crashes. So we've, again, utilizing that TDOT database, we look at the crash history, and it includes information such as time of day, conditions, and so we're able to kind of highlight those hot spots, again, where there may be issues at intersections or along various roadway segments. Okay, so in additional to mobility, utilities is an important aspect to community planning. The availability of sewer or lack of availability to sewer and water influences development for sure. So we're going to be evaluating, you can kind of see, well, the map that you're seeing relates to the internet speed here in Tullahoma, which I will say is a really great asset for the community, especially of a community of this size. But I was just mentioning we are going to be evaluating the sewer and water network the maps, and kind of evaluate the areas that may be undeveloped currently because there is no sewer, or we're going to be looking at those areas that might be undeveloped, but we expect it to become developed because of the availability of sewer and water. So those are some of the topics and issues that we'll be looking at as it relates to mobility and utilities.
Thanks, Liesl. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the initial findings on your local economic base. You have about 12,000 jobs currently. It's a very diverse economic base. Some of the jobs are in healthcare, a lot in retail, professional and technical services, manufacturing, and accommodation services and restaurants. You know AEDC is a major employer here, a driver for your local economy, but you do have a diverse economic base with Coca-Cola, Tennessee Apparel, a lot of different types of company, Wisco, Envelope, etc. So you're starting from a good, diverse economic base. That's a great place to start. Since 2002, or let's say between 2002 and 2018 or 19, you lost about 2,500 jobs. Now, most of those, or a large number of those, were in manufacturing. Which happened across the country when the manufacturing base sort of fell, especially during the previous recession. But as a result, you have a falling share or a smaller share of the metropolitan or micropolitan area that includes not only Coffee County, but Franklin County and Moore County as well. In 2002, you had about 40% of the jobs in those 3 counties, and then by 2010, it fell to about 35%. And has since fallen to about 29%. So Tullahoma's role in that regional economy has been shrinking a bit, but still obviously very important, at almost 30% of the jobs in that whole region. Unemployment, not surprisingly, peaked at the beginning of the pandemic at about 21%, which is more than 1 out of 5 jobs lost during that time in April of 2020, but has since subsided, so that's a good sign. While there's been some decline in jobs, especially in manufacturing, you've had a lot of growth in other types of jobs. For example, management services, tourism types of jobs, healthcare, administrative services, and public sector jobs. Those have all been increasing substantial rates over the past 15 or 20 years. And then you've had population growth. It's been fairly slow growth, but still stable growth, or modest growth. And the newest numbers indicate that you're over 20,000 population in 2020. And also that represents about 9.6% growth over the past 10 years, so close to 1% per year in population growth. You've also had growth in households and in household income, which is a good sign because that supports your market for goods and services in Tullahoma. And next we'll let Phil talk a little bit more about zoning.
Exciting stuff. Zoning. Wow. Okay, thanks, Randy. Yeah, and I mentioned this before when, I can't remember what we were showing, what slide it was, but I mentioned that you have a fairly limited number of zoning categories. And so we expect some changes to occur when we do the place types map and the plan gets adopted, and you'll probably want to revise your zoning. But right now you have 3 commercial zones. The C1, which is that, and y'all can see the colors, but the kind of mustard color is your downtown area. C2 is more like highway commercial type stuff. It's not shown on this map. We don't have the layer right now, but I guess we can add it. And that's also neighborhood commercial. Now that may be one, I got to dig into that further. It may be one of those that you have to apply to get it designated. Oh, that's probably the answer. Oh, there is? Gotcha. Okay, so there's 3 or 4. Yeah, but that's like, small scale commercial that can fit comfortably into a residential area is what that tends to be. You have 2 different industrial zones, a light industrial and a heavy industrial. 4 different residential categories. R1 is the lowest density. Up to R4 is where you actually can have like multifamily and that sort of thing. AG, the kind of dark green color, that's agriculture, and that's all kind of peripheral to the town. OS1, like here, is an open space, smaller lots and more open space preserved. And then you've got the airport impact overlay here. There's also, we don't have the map up right now, but there's also an urban growth boundary, which you may know about, and that's an area outside of the city limits where you could potentially grow into if you can annex the areas, if that makes sense. And really it's all limited to the north side of town is where most of that land is, and the southern part. And even right now, the Planning Commission can review development applications within those areas. Another thing related to zoning is your historic resources. So right now you've got 2 National Register historic districts, and one is the North Atlantic Street District. The other one, which is very, very small, it's only a few lots, is the North Washington Historic District. And while they're, National Register districts are kind of honorary, they do come with financial incentives for rehabilitation projects of buildings, but there's no protection offered. So, one thing you may want to look at, it's been considered in the past here, is a local historic district system where you would actually regulate, the demolition of buildings, alteration of historic buildings, new infill development to make sure it's compatible. And you've actually got the ordinance on the books. It's adopted. There's just never been designation of actual districts. And in fact, this is a map of some potential districts that have been considered in the past. So that's something we'll address in the plan as to whether it makes sense to move forward with that. One other thing I want to bring up too, we don't have a slide for this, but sometimes you get into a project and an issue kind of bubbles to the surface that you realize, oh, you know what, we've got to address this too. Now, all of us here on our planning team believe in what's called smart growth, which has sort of an environmental friendly underpinning to it, right? But it's been brought to our attention that we really need to address head on climate change. And so that's something we've already written up a section just in the background part of the plan, and we're going to look at things. But when it comes to climate change, there are kind of two sides to the coin. One is mitigation. In other words, how do you stop contributing to climate change, and how do you mitigate it? Things like, for example, renewable sources of energy, like solar panels, right? How about, requiring electric, the power stations, for electric vehicles, maybe for public buildings and other, large-scale development. Things of that nature. Trying to preserve more tree canopy, since trees filter out air pollution and, greenhouse gases and that sort of thing. So that's one side of the coin. The other side is like, okay, now that we got global, climate change, and you get dramatic weather changes, and we have things like flooding, like we saw this past weekend in West Tennessee or west of us. What do you do with floodplains? Making sure to, try to keep development away from areas that are going to be prone to flooding. So anyway, again, we didn't have a slide for that, but I wanted to get that out there and just raise the issue since we'll be addressing it. Okay, with that done, if you want to flip on the lights. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's like coming out of the mole people have surfaced. we should issue sunglasses for a transitional period, right? All right, so we got it there.
So one of the things that I was hoping maybe we could see in Tullahoma later on is that we have a really good type of shelter for dogs and things like that, but there isn't one for cats or other types of animals. So just personally, we found lots of kittens over the years every now and then, and so it'd be nice to maybe see where there could be something as an extension to some of the shelter and things like that for cats as well.
That's great. So a cat shelter and other. By the way, can somebody on our team be writing some notes? That would be great, just so we can capture all this, or we can watch the film. That's the other way to. Next, anybody else have some ideas they want to share or thoughts?
Hi. A couple of things. When we walked in the door, we were handed this piece of paper, and I totally appreciate consideration of natural resources and cultural resources, but this doesn't belong in this process. I'm sure it was probably an outside thing. So it's called the Different Comprehensive Planning for Tullahoma. And you mentioned green energy and climate change and so on. This is a town of 20,000 people. This looks like it was written by UC, by the University of California, whichever. If any of you would like some alternate opinion and actually some really, really well thought out information, Michael Schellenberger, he's part of the group that publishes the intergovernmental Council on Climate Change, and wrote a book called Apocalypse Never, and really looks at common sense approaches to issues that we're facing today. And so anyway, so I just wanted to make that known. I come from California, and I don't want to see this place turned into, I'll refrain from using language that I normally would, the place where I came from. Thank you. Third term of Jerry Brown, we're hoping to get rid of the next term of Gavin Newsom, but I can't vote there anymore.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, does that, the study that you referenced or the source, I mean, do they acknowledge climate change? But they apparently they think it's blown out of proportion.
Oh, they absolutely do. Okay. Yeah, Michael Schellenberger is absolutely fascinating. He's got a history of being on the radical left and being part of Greenpeace and all of those until he kind of woke up and saw what it was what forcing these green energies, especially in South America, in Africa, what they were doing to, it makes no sense. Solar energy makes no sense whatsoever. When you look at the actual capacity of energy that they use, when you look at most people that, they look at a windmill and it's like, oh, but do you realize how much mining goes into having to produce that material? The lithium, the rare earths, all of those things that we don't have a lot of. Afghanistan does, but we know who's going to get that now. And so you actually have to mine these materials, and nobody ever takes into consideration all the energy that goes into that. And that includes electric cars. California has been on this electrical, battery cars for a long time, and they are now starting to see, what do we do? We can't, what do we do with all these batteries? Because they're all dead. And China's not taking our waste anymore. So, the landfills are starting to fill up. They actually have to bury, these huge blades, mammoth blades have to be, you can't recycle them. Much less those, the windmills, they're killing birds, they're killing insects. But nobody looks at those other results. So he has a really thoughtful look at a lot of these different issues. So I highly recommend that book, Apocalypse Never.
Appreciate that. All righty. Anybody else want to share their thoughts? All right.
Yes, sir. I have a very deep concern about the lack of industrial plants here in Tullahoma. When and this has been a few days ago, came to Tullahoma, this was the place to come to work. You had jobs where they paid benefits, they paid a decent, where you could make a living. Now all we want to get is a fast food restaurant or commercial, and hey, I eat out more than anybody, I guess, but we need something where people are working more than 20 to 30 hours a week and no benefits. So we've got B.F. Goodrich building that's empty. Tullahoma Industries, I came by there today around before lunch. There's 3 or 4 cars there. Wilson Sporting Goods has been empty for several years. Tennessee Apparel is closing down. So we need some things in here where they can pay a decent wage and decent money to where, and with benefits, not through a temp agency.
Thank you very much. And Randy Gross, our economist, will be working on the economic development aspect of the plan, so it's definitely something we're going to address. Thank you.
I guess it was definitely before COVID, so maybe 2 or 3 years ago we had another firm whose name I don't remember come and kind of do a survey both here in Tullahoma and in Manchester, asking the citizens their opinions about the roadways and excessive. It was a mobility study. So, the bottom line of that, there were many, many people that said, sidewalks, please. So I think that's a crying need and has been for years on these major, Jackson has sidewalks. Cedar Lane does not. Cedar Lane has needed sidewalks since Columbus came over, so just saying. And they also talked about, in that study, doing a Greenway connection between Tullahoma and Manchester so that we would have a bike path and a walkway up there. Great idea, great idea. So I don't know how that's fitting in with what you are studying right now. Maybe you can answer that for me.
Sure, and I'm well aware we all have copies of that bike ped plan, and it looks really good. We don't have to reinvent the wheel on that aspect of this plan. We'll look at what they proposed and integrate it into what we, if we see adjustments that we think make sense, obviously we would do that. But no, it's really good. It shows, where you make sidewalk connections, where there are gaps, new areas for sidewalks, same thing with, bike paths, the Greenway system, expanding that, which is obviously a lot of great potential for that. So, no, it's a great document, and we'll definitely, pay a lot of attention to it and be able to incorporate most of those ideas, I would think. So, thank you.
I'll go as well. I always find when people are looking at the future of a city, they always look at how can we grow things, let's grow, let's grow, let's grow. And I think if you look at Franklin, Tennessee, you say, hey, this looks like it used to be a really nice town to live in, and now it's kind of a mess. I mean, I enjoy going there, I enjoy going to the shops, I enjoy going to the restaurants, but I say, would I want to live here? No, probably not. It's too much traffic, too much going on. And with Atlanta, I'm always thinking it's always nice to see Atlanta in your rearview mirror because you made it through it. I don't know why every highway in Georgia has to go through Atlanta, but I guess so. What we really should be thinking about is, do we really want to grow? And if we do grow, what kind of growth do we want? Do we, don't just let's get bigger for bigger sake. Let's bring in lots of huge companies. Let's put Amazon fulfillment center and put 30,000 jobs and so on. I mean, Tullahoma it has been a lot bigger in the past. I think it was like 80,000 or so during World War II, and it's actually shrunk since that time. So I think we should really keep that in mind, is how big do we really want to be, and let's have valuable growth and not just growth for growth's sake. Other thing I want to talk about is the bike paths. So coming over here on Short Springs, there's a bike path, but it's kind of a sidewalk. Gets an enormous amount of use. However, it gets very little bicycle use. It gets walkers, it gets dog walkers, it gets, kids going to school use it some. I ride my bike, I ride on it, although I'm always scaring people who are walking on it when I do that. The bikes tend to use the roads, and so that particular road is very narrow, there's ditches on both sides, it's very dangerous. And so going around a bike, doing that, what you have to do is really a pain. So I think we should definitely think about putting shoulders in, maybe putting sidewalks in. I mean, you get a huge amount of use out of that one sidewalk. And I think we ought to see more of them around town. But I think you also, if you're going to have bikes on the road, you should also put enough room for them so cars don't have to be in danger or endanger the bicyclists when they're going around it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or thoughts? Well, I tell you what, we'll go. I'm sorry. Sure.
Good afternoon. Sorry, my English. I come from Chile, and I moved here about 7 years. I love Tullahoma. I would like to read the book that you mentioned, but I'm part of a small company trying to have solar power. Yes, in the beginning of the building of the solar panels, the building of lithium, and all this is not been like environmental safe, but their achievement and the new ways to do things, they are getting to. I know for in my country, in Chile, in the north is the Atacama Desert. Is one of the driest land on earth, and it's a lot of silica. So for that, you can have pretty much endless amounts of silica to build those solar panels. Rare earth is also abundant. The Chilean government is working on getting safe and better for the environment ways to actually extract those minerals. They are using solar power to fill up a dam or a lake, and then in the nighttime release that water downstream to actually produce the biggest amount of power to produce all this stuff and to electrify cities. Their goal is to be as a Chile following the the Paris Agreement, to be power independent. If we go in the nuclear route, which is, I believe that's the author is pushing for, okay, we can have what happened in Japan, and 3 years ago. That's kind of, we can try to go. The city might want to consider try to get renewable energies, because if you dependent constantly and paying somebody for that, then what is the turnaround? Are we just gonna be endless? That's a bill that will never end. If we can produce our own, then we can all just stop paying bills. I know there are companies out there overselling or they're promising the world, and it's not true. It's hard to achieve. To get actually what the companies from Nashville, they're saying you can actually get a check from the utility board. That's not quite true. And so right now, solar power is just a thing, is growing, but some people are getting, unfortunately, there are some business that are just not been truthful. So that's going to be people going to be scared to approach that. I wish that we can get to some kind of renewable energies that's looking for the future, because we're not here for the long run. We're just passing by. And what we leaving behind for our kids, that's what we need to think about it, not just ours and what we benefit from now, but what we leave from our kids. And that's what that's all I have to share.
Thank you very much. It's great to hear different perspectives on one issue, and that's the beauty of a meeting like this, right? So, great. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, let's we'll go to our little issue stations, and you're free to mill around, and we're going to try to sell you on the dot exercise there on the map between the two bathroom doors, and that'll do it. But thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it.